Jacqueline Garcia. I'm a reporter with Spanish newspaper La Opinión, and I'm here with Anabel from ABC7 and Carlos from KTLA. We're gonna have a conversation about being bilingual bicultural reporters tag best career moves. So this is a conversation with these two awesome millennial journalists. And we're gonna go straight to the questions. Anabel and Carlos, tell us a little bit. We're gonna start with the first question. If you can tell us a little bit about your background and what motivated you to become a journalist. Let's start with Anabel.
Okay, good morning, Jacqueline, Carlos, everyone who is watching and joining us. Briefly, I was born and raised in Southeast LA County, mostly Paramount, Bellflower, proud daughter of Mexican immigrants. My mom was born in Oaxaca. My grandmother was from Oaxaca, and most of my family grew up in Mexico City. And my grandmother was the one who really was the matriarch, had the vision for her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren to one day have a future here in the US. So incredibly grateful to her. She played a crucial role in my career, in my education, just supporting me with her words and financially at times as well. So yeah, that's a little bit of my family. First language is Spanish. I didn't start speaking English until about the second grade, even though I grew up here, which then came in as a very important skill as a journalist, right? Being able to retain the language. And yeah, I think I always considered two careers when I was young, a lawyer or a storyteller, a journalist, right? And I had a really hard time deciding, but to make a very long story short, I have a lot of faith in God, and I felt God answered my question, and he told me to pursue journalism, at least to begin, because I think there's always room to do different things in the future. And it was because of people, right? Ever since I was little, my mom said I would approach people in the line at the bank and ask them their names and just ask them questions. So I love hearing people's stories, and I love sharing them. And I think the power there is in information, and sharing that is crucial. So briefly, that's my story.
Perfect. And what about Carlos? Carlos, tell us a little bit about your story.
Hey, buenos dias, everyone. Good morning. Happy to be here. I was born and raised in Hollywood, just a few blocks away from the KTLA studios, right on Sunset and Vine. Spent all my childhood there. Like Anabel, I grew up speaking Spanish. Didn't learn English until second, third grade, took ESL classes. My parents were both Salvadorians. All my family is. They grew up in a very small town away from the city, right near the border with Guatemala. Grew up going there every year of my life, and it was really the best gift that my parents could give me, because I was able to just realize how difficult life is for other people and how we shouldn't be complaining for what we have. So I was really grateful for that. Yeah, I went to LeConte Middle School, went to Hollywood High School. My parents moved here in the 80s, hard workers, and they taught me to be a hard worker as well. My two career paths or career dreams were either a soccer player or a soccer broadcaster. Soccer player didn't happen, sadly. So then I thought, well, maybe pursue something in, soccer or sports broadcasting. When I went into that, I realized that news was probably a better choice for me, and that was my passion. So here I am.
You're muted.
I think that at this point, you guys are motivating a lot of the people that are watching you, just to see that you are local, that you grew up here, that you have become you have done what you are dreaming of, and you continue. So that's amazing. So our next question is, when did you decide to make your move to the English media, and why? And the reason why I ask this question is because we know that Anabel, you were working in Mundo Fox, you did some work in Univision. So, and then we saw you at ABC7. So what motivated you to do this move?
I'm going to go back to my faith foundation, because when I was in college and one of my professors suggested I begin in Spanish language news. I hadn't even thought of that as a possibility. And I didn't really consider it in that moment. At that point, I didn't feel my Spanish was strong enough. But to make another long story short, I felt this deep desire, and I don't know the right word, maybe like a conviction, based on all of the topics that I was so immersed in. I felt like I really wanted to report for the Spanish speaking community. And I started in Palm Springs in the Coachella Valley. And I never thought about, or I never seriously thought about going to English. I was really happy in Spanish. And even today, I don't rule out going back to Spanish because I'm blessed with the ability to do it in both languages, right? But our station was dismantled all of a sudden, and we all got laid off from really one day to the next. On a Friday, basically, we kind of saw it coming on the Monday, and I had been reflecting on the future and on the need for bicultural reporters in English-speaking newsrooms, and I thought, you know, this might be the time. I didn't have a job, and my dream for a long time was ABC7. So I just went for it and I applied, and I knew that it would come to fruition somehow. I didn't know when, I didn't know the details, but I had a lot of faith that that was the next place where I was supposed to work. And it really, it happened, and I was just in tears. I couldn't believe it. So it really was, to answer your question, it was out of the reflection and realization that we do need bicultural and bilingual reporters in English language newsrooms, and not just Spanish speakers, right? So many cultures that need to be represented in our newsrooms.
Definitely. On Carlos' side, we know that you went to Cal State Northridge and you studied the Spanish minor journalism. So I'm sure that you have some experience on the Spanish media. So, but what made you make this move?
Yeah, so being part of that program, my first offer actually for TV news was in Las Vegas for Univision, and I was so thrilled because I was the first one to get, you know, an offer. But I thought, damn, like there's something about this that doesn't feel right. I thought I was taking the easy way out. You know, everyone told me you got to work for Univision or for Telemundo because you have, I don't know, you'll fit in and you have the language, but I just didn't feel right to me. I felt like there were more challenges out there for me. So I declined that offer and I said, well, maybe I made the biggest mistake of my life, but here I am. So, you know, this wasn't meant to be. I got another job offer for another station in Spanish, and it also didn't feel right. I thought, well, maybe I should just challenge myself to work in English. And I had to wait another year. All my other friends were getting their jobs, moving on to their first markets, and there I was still waiting. And I kept considering, well, maybe I should just give up and do Spanish rather. But no, I was patient, and I got my first job offer in English in Palm Springs, and I started and really, yeah, represent, right? It was really the best decision. I felt like, you know, I was able to connect with my Spanish community that was really poorly represented there. I was sent to all these different communities doing stories, and that's where, you know, my biculturalism, bilingual really played in and really has helped a lot.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Before we continue, let me remind everyone that we are also live on Facebook. And if anyone has questions, you guys can start asking any questions that you want to know from our panelists. You can write it on the Q&A on the chat, and then we're going to go to any questions that you may have. Also on Facebook, we can check the questions. One of the questions that I want to ask as a follow-up on this for both of you guys is, once you get the job at ABC7, once you get the job at KTLA, when you are putting your foot there, like your feet, like when you were there, so how do you feel? Like, do you feel like, oh, this Latino is getting here and I feel like this? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I was definitely nervous. I think imposter syndrome is very real. And I never, for a long time, I didn't know what that was called. I just know that I experienced it all the time in college, especially, and then transitioning to English language reporting. Just that feeling that I may not be good enough to be here. People are judging me because I'm coming from a background that isn't traditional. I need to prove myself to myself and to the people around me. And I know that I've grown as a journalist, and I know I have a lot of growth to do, but I think that imposter syndrome never fully goes away. And, one of the mentors that I've spoken with always said, the reality is you have to work harder, and you have to read obsessively, and you have to be the smartest person in the room, or at least aim for that, right? So there's always this sense that you do have to prove yourself. But I will say that I have been incredibly blessed with a news director. My first news director at ABC7, who's not there anymore, the one who gave me the opportunity, and all of my producers who have allowed me to be, and not allowed me, but encourage me to be the truest, most authentic self in my storytelling, from the way that I pronounce things, to the way that I present stories. So it's been a really beautiful and challenging journey in many ways.
Perfect. What about you, Carlos?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm going to be honest. I work morning shifts every morning before I go live. I think, am I good enough to be here? Like, is this really happening? What do I have to do to prove myself to people at home, people, at the station? And it's sad, but it is a reality. But like Anabel said, you just have to work hard to prove yourself. It really is up to you to encourage yourself, to keep making a name for yourself. We were talking with you, Jacqueline, right before this started, that do you have to roll your R's when you pronounce your last name, or do you have to say it a certain way? And yeah, I've been encouraged as well by my station, by KTLA, to be myself. That's what they want. They want Carlos, not Carlos. They want Carlos Herrera, not Carlos Herrera. They want me to just have my culture shine, because that's something that they want to stand out. And yeah, it really is a blessing, and I'm so thankful for it.
Perfect. Exactly. We were talking about that a little bit earlier, and Anabel brought a really good point when she was saying that for us as Latinos, we are taught to always say yes, like, oh, if they offer you work on the weekend, work on the weekend. If they offer you like late shift, morning shifts, whatever, say yes. But at one point, like you were saying, Anabel, right? Like sometimes you also have to take care of yourself and learn to say no. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I thought that was amazing when you were talking about that earlier.
Yeah, I think, the first few years of my career, I thought, I can't take a vacation, at least for like 4 years, 3 years, whatever that number is, right? I was like, I'm just going to work hard. And, even in college, and I'll say it's balanced, like I'm here, it's worked out. But my advice to people who are beginning is think about your mental health, prioritize. There are moments and there are seasons in your life where you can give more, and there are others where you have to take care of yourself. And so, I missed class. If they called me into work at my internship, I wouldn't go to class. And my last semester, it suffered. My GPA suffered because my last semester I just worked and I didn't go to school as much. And so, a few years in, especially when I worked the morning shift, Carlos, I know you can relate to this, and anyone who's watching and is considering, like, what is it going to be like when I start? The hours and the sacrifices to your personal life are significant, and it's something to consider. So I was filling in on the morning shift for about 7 months, and I am not a morning person. to begin with, like not even a regular morning person, let alone having to wake up at 2 a.m. And those 7 months really took a toll on my physical and mental health. I was just exhausted all the time. I was irritable. I was gaining weight. I was just struggling across the board. And that was in part kind of a wake-up call that I needed to prioritize my rest when I could. And I'm so grateful I am now on a regular shift. And, you know, with the year that we've had, and I think years in many ways, your mental health does need attention because of the stories that you cover. I really need this Saturday and this Sunday to rest and recover. And so I prioritize that a lot more. And I still pick up the phone and say yes when I can. But if I know I need rest, if I know I need to recover from what I have been through physically or mentally that week, then I politely say I can't, you know, just be honest about that.
What about you, Carlos? How do you manage this?
Just don't tell your parents what you're doing in that weekend, because then they will make you feel
Yeah.
so bad.
They do.
Go ahead, Carlos. Go ahead.
Yeah, it is tough because you've been taught no, when you're a kid, hey, you got to work hard for everything. Never say no. If they're calling you in for a reason. They don't want the other person, and then you end up saying no, and then your parents end up guilting you for, hey, they're gonna take someone else. It's your bad, your fault. But yeah, think about yourself. When I was in college, we would get all these talks, and it would tell us, go anywhere, just get that first job offer and take it, go anywhere. Doesn't matter what shift, doesn't matter what position, you just got to get your foot in the door. And I feel like that's something, I guess you need to consider yourself more before you take that first job offer, before you get into this business, because yeah, it takes a toll on you physically, mentally. It's really draining. The hours you work, you won't see your family, you'll be away for holidays, several years, and it is so tough, especially for me. I'm such a family boy. It was hard being away from my family for 6-7 years, not spending Christmas, not spending New Year's with them. So consider that. If you can't make it, or you don't feel right, don't feel well, just don't do it. Take that time to yourself and relax, take that breather, go for a walk, go for a run, go for that hike. It really makes that much of a difference, especially these days where, things keep changing so much. For me, I work the morning shift. Thankfully, it's not as bad as it was before. But yeah, the sleep schedule is pretty bad. Thankfully now I get my weekend, so I get to relax Saturday and Sunday, but then I'm back at it on Monday. So before you fully immerse into this career, you got to consider that.
Perfect. One of the things that we see, and I would like you guys to elaborate a little bit on this, is mental health. For us as journalists, we tend to cover a lot of stories that are very serious, very important. Sometimes we've seen lately the stories, COVID, immigration, and all these things. How do you guys do to manage your mental health? Because remember, we tend to cover a story that it could be heartbreaking, but then the next day we got to go cover another one, and the next day we got to cover another one. How do you guys manage your mental health in this part?
This week for me was a perfect example of that. And I'll say I have therapy at noon right after this. So I do therapy every Saturday at noon. That's just part of my routine. And it has been for a few years. And sometimes I don't feel like I need it, and I'm like, I don't really want to log on, but I do. It always just helps me think about life, process the week. I just got back from the border. I was in Tijuana last week for a few days. And, like many moments throughout these past years, you feel like you can't keep up. You can't keep up with the story that you're covering, the story that you're reading. And my beat right now, which is a blessing and a huge challenge, is race and culture. So I often feel like I want to be in 10 places at once and tell 10 stories at once when I'm not done telling one story and processing the emotions that I'm experiencing as a result of that. So this week, for example, I just felt physically beat, and I knew that it was the emotional toll that it was taking on me. And I had to try to focus on one thing at a time and prioritize sleep. For me, if I know I'm exhausted mentally and I don't really have a lot to give, I just have to sleep those 8 hours, and then I can come back the next day and go a little bit longer. And so sleep and therapy are critical for me.
Good, very good. What about Carlos?
For me, it really is about talking about it. Once I'm off the clock, I call someone, my family, my friends, whoever, and I just start talking. And sometimes most of the time it's my mom, and I can just picture her like just putting me on mute and just leaving me on the speakerphone and doing her own things. But I just need to let it out. I need to talk about it. A lot of my friends tell me, dude, are you gonna let me get a word in? And it's true. Like, I'm sorry, but I just need to let this out. Maybe I had a bad day at work. Maybe the story didn't work out as I wanted. Maybe, I don't know, there was something going on during my last shot. I don't know, something. And you need to let that problem out. Let someone hear about it. And secondly, for me, it's recently been just working out, going for a run or a hike. You sweat it off. You put your headphones on. You listen to music, and you disconnect from the world. And you need that. You need that. For me, that's what I do on Sundays. I just chill on my own. That's me time, and no one will bother me. Turn off my phone, and it really has helped a lot, especially for the last few months where we've been doing a lot of COVID stories, vaccinations, and yeah, it's so repetitive. And you think, well, it's an easy story. Well, no, it really isn't. It's so tiring. It's draining.
Definitely, it kind of stays on the back of your head, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You don't take care of it, like it starts accumulating, right?
Exactly. So you really need that alone time.
Perfect. Okay. As I was mentioning, we are starting to get questions on our chat. So we're gonna get some of the questions, and if any of our audience have questions, keep adding them. So we're gonna share them with our panelists. So one of the questions that we have here is from Miriam Villarreal with double R. So and she's an anchor. She's an anchor in Spanish local newscast in Fort Myers. So she's saying that she's only doing right now Spanish media. But she wants to know what suggestions or advice would you have for the next move in the career as a bilingual journalist to work on the English media or using both languages?
Miriam, I think, when I first started thinking about it, I just started practicing it. And I know it may sound weird because you speak English, so you don't think, to practice, but I say it in the sense that I started just shooting some videos, like cell phone videos. If I was going to do a teaser for my story at Mundo Fox, I started doing a teaser in English as well and sharing it on social media. And that helped me kind of start thinking about my reel. And when I applied for ABC7, I actually didn't have a full-on reel. I didn't have anything in English other than my cell phone videos, which I didn't end up using for my reel. But I just started thinking about, you can use your skills, even if you're not using them on air, you can use them on your social media platforms and kind of start building that. And I don't know if you work for a station that does have an English, because I know sometimes like the NBC Telemundo has the partnership. But if you're thinking about that, I would just say start producing content in English. When you're shooting your story, ask the same questions in English, start putting stuff together. And then you said, what differences, if any, are there between English and Spanish markets? I mean, I think every station is different in general. Smaller markets tend to be like in my experience, like very family, there's only like 6 of you in the whole building. So you become kind of this family. And then, you come to LA and there's just so many more people in a newsroom where you don't even have time to say hi to each other. I do miss like the aspect of getting to my newsroom and like saludar a todos de beso and like, we don't really do that in my newsroom. It'd probably be weird if I approached one of my producers and kiss them on the cheek, right? But it's part of our culture, and for Latinos. So it's just a little bit different in that way, but I don't know. Carlos.
Yeah, pretty much start shooting.
Go ahead.
Yeah, start shooting your reel now. Start looking into what market you want to work at, what station you want to work at. Look at what content they're producing, and start making those connections with people who work there or people that have been through markets like that, and start sending them your stand-ups, your stories, and have them critique it before you actually create that reel. You'll get the best feedback from them, and you want to start as early as possible because this process takes time. I know sometimes we're applying for jobs or sending emails to these news directors or assistant news directors or executive producers, and we don't hear back for 2-3 weeks. So just make sure that you know that it's going to take a while for this process to start. So just start shooting your content now. And then, yeah, she said, what differences are there between it, English and Spanish? I haven't really worked at a Spanish market. But yeah, English market, I can assume it's pretty different. So if you're ready for it.
And I guess one of the things that both of you guys could agree is that the first step that we have to do is just go for it, because like one of the professors used to say, we already have the no. If you go, they may say no to us, but they may say yes. So if we don't do it, we're already being told no, right? So I guess that at this point, just the fact of trying, like whether it happens or not. So, okay, so we're gonna go with the next questions, and there's no name in here, but they say, how do you cope with the fact that there are so many inequities in the journalism world? I work for an NPR affiliate, and at my station, I'm the lowest paid producer and the only person of color in my team. Whenever I try to bring up stories about Latinos or other cultures, and I met with, well, that's not our target audience. How do you handle this? Oh, and that's a good question, because we've seen that sometimes in Spanish or English. We want to bring a story, but then they're like, oh, it's not good enough. And we think that it's a really good story. So any of you want to answer to this question?
You want to go, Carlos? Sorry.
Oh, pretty much just push for it. Just keep pushing, advocating. Guess what? Most of the stations that said that before are now changing their mind and saying, whoa, that's incorrect. I'm gonna need to shift my focus now because these stories are important. So just keep pushing that message.
I just want to say my heart goes out to you. It hurts me to think about what you're experiencing, because it can be exhausting, right? You see these stories and you want to cover them, and you know how important they are, and you don't have that support. My experience has been a little different, right? Working in Spanish language news, and then working in LA, where we have a very diverse audience in many ways. But I would say get connected with organizations, whether there's an NAHJ chapter where you are, or other chapters. You know, one example I often think about is what's happening at the LA Times, and the way reporters there, Latino and Black journalists, have organized together to bring all of these concerns to management, to their editors, and really lay out why there have to be changes, and have gotten results because of that. So I think there is power in numbers, and I don't know if there are other people of color in your region, other journalists of color that you can work with. And I think that we are at this really pivotal moment in journalism where it is the moment to raise these concerns, where, like Carlos said, management, editors are rethinking how we've done news for so many years, and what we need to do different and why. And sometimes I speak up when I have concerns over a story, either because it's not being told or how it's being told. And sometimes I think, like, I don't want to be that person, all the time. But that's why we're in these newsrooms, right? To voice our concerns, to raise, to bring up stories that are often undercovered. And I would just say, look for people, either mentors maybe, who are in other markets or around you in other publications, whether it's newspaper or TV, and kind of start strategizing and working on that.
Perfect. Okay, so we're gonna go over our next question from Araceli Crescencio, and then she's saying that both of you touch on the imposter syndrome and the reality of having to prove yourself. How do you build up your confidence during low moments? like a bad life shot, the story not working out, etc. I'm sure I see Anabel, you may have some good experiences on that.
I mean, I think this is true in life. You aren't your biggest mistake, right? That isn't a holistic picture of who you are as a person or as a journalist. And I think for me, again, therapy is really important, putting it into perspective, sharing it with someone else, because sometimes in your head, you make it out to be this really big thing, and it really isn't, you know? Um, and and I think what also really helps me is remembering that what we do is actually not about us. So if I mess up, or if I, didn't feel like, especially with delivery things, right? Um, I try to remember that the important thing is the person that I'm interviewing, the story that I'm telling, and remove that focus away from yourself as much as possible. And I think that helps me just keep it all into perspective, and obviously just learning from it. I've found that some of my biggest mistakes, like even early in Palm Springs when I was anchoring one time, I got tricked up because I realized I was reading the wrong thing, and I just stopped reading. I just looked at the camera and I just stared. I just froze. And it was so embarrassing, but I never did that again because I knew how I could get out of that. I just hadn't experienced it before. So, being able to laugh at yourself too.
Mhm. Carlos?
Yeah, I think that the most important thing for me was laughing at myself, because it really is not that bad. I can assure you that your mistake wasn't that bad. Like I mentioned before, have someone to talk with about these issues, about whatever you think you messed up on, because it really isn't that bad. Watch yourself. Like, if you did a live shot and you thought it was bad, well, rewatch it and say, well, what did I do wrong? And don't make that same mistake again, because then if you really make that same mistake again, then it really is on you, not, it wasn't really a mistake. But yeah, just be positive. You have an opportunity to do this again the next day. Or for us, if you have a bad live shot, at 4 a.m., then I'll have another opportunity at 5 a.m. And it just keeps moving. Yeah, be positive. Also, I'm not sure how religious you guys are or whatever. I'm not going to get into that, but I am really religious. So just think about, things happen for a reason. God gave me this opportunity right now, and it's going to get better the next time. Just keep it positive.
Is there any experience that you can share, Carlos, that you remember there's something that you thought you did so bad and then
Yeah, when I was in Palm Springs, my live shots were just terrible. I remember, and I was doing a live shot. There was a crash on I-10, and I'm just talking. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm doing really well." And then I said, I think I either forgot the name of a person or said it wrong or said it incorrectly. I don't know, whatever. Point is, I just froze. And it wasn't like a 5-second, 10-second pause. It was a 30-second pause. And then, a director in IFE talks to me and says, talk. And I'm just standing there, 30, 35 seconds, 40 seconds. Anyway, that was a bad live shot. Okay, whatever. And then I got the opportunity to do it again for the following half hour. And it was great. It was the best live shot I did there. So again, it goes to prove that, you have an opportunity to kind of improve for your next your next live shot, or your next story, next package, whatever.
awesome.
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad.
Yeah, you wasted some really good 35 seconds there.
And producers hate losing those 30-35 seconds.
That's gold. Definitely. Okay, our next question comes from Brisa Colon. Do you have any advice for an undergrad trying to get their first internship? How do I make my application and resume stand out?
That's a tough one. Because as an intern, for me, it was just blessed to get chosen, honestly. And it really is just let it play out, honestly. Whatever is for you, lo que es tuyo, nadie te lo quita. No one's gonna take it away from you. So just cross your fingers, pray, whatever you do, and something will come to you. I promise. just be consistent, send those emails, and someone will get back to you.
I'll share briefly, how my grandmother played a role in this. Like I said, I can pinpoint the moment when I decided I wanted to start in Spanish language news. I was in a congressional internship, and I was just sitting at my desk doing research, and the staff there asked all of the interns to make a 4-year plan, 4 or 5 year plan, I don't remember. And you had to plan out like year by year what you were going to do. And so I just started thinking about it, and I was like, I really want to work at Univision and I want to apply there. And I know it's weird to call it Univision. Everyone calls me out on that, but internally that's what they call it. So I got used to it. So side note. And then I called in that moment while I was sitting at my desk, and they were like, oh, we're sorry, we actually don't have an internship program right now. And then my grandma, Lolita, rest in peace, one day she was at the house and she was watching Univision, and she said, Anabel, están buscando lo que tú quieres, eso de estudiantes que quieren que trabajen. And I was like, no, Lolita, like they're not hiring. I just talked to them. And she's like, sí, yo lo vi. So I'm like, okay, fine, I'll call. And I called, and they were hiring interns. And I was like, oh my God. So I applied, said a prayer, and it worked out. So like Carlos said, it's partly faith, but in my personal experience, but you also have to do your part, right? And then things kind of just start lining up that way. And I will say I have a lot of friends and colleagues who have not had the same experience. Like Carlos said, he had to wait for the opportunity. And I've had friends who graduated with me who are excellent reporters, if not better reporters, and spent 2-3 years looking for their first job. And so just remember that everyone's journey is different, and that, like Carlos said, lo que es para ti, nadie te lo quita.
Yeah, just be consistent and wait. Something's gonna come. When I graduated from college, I had an internship at ABC7, and I was placed. I initially applied for the news department, and I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to get the news department." I had heard it was the best, right? Then I got a call back, and they said, "Hey, we have an internship spot open at the desk." And I said, "Well, what the heck? I didn't apply for that." Said, "Well, do you want it or not? You have a day to think about it." So I called back and I said, "Yeah, let's take it. I don't know what the desk is, but I thought I was making a really bad decision because I'd heard really bad things about an internship at the assignment desk." I went in there, and I was probably 3 weeks or a month, and my supervisor wouldn't talk to me. I would go in and say good morning. I would do everything she asked, but she wouldn't even, nothing. She would not talk to me, and it was the worst. And I thought, well, why did I do this? Why do I want an internship so bad? Why do I want to intern here? I'm gonna leave. So I considered leaving at least 3 times. My mom said, no, roll it out. Anyway, the reason I'm telling you is that this is because after those 3 weeks or a month of having a bad time there, I started getting my supervisor's trust, and she started sending me out on stories, shooting my stand-ups, making those calls, working on stories. So it turned out to be the best decision of my life. So it's important to just be positive and be patient, and know that whatever you're doing, and it seems like it's going a bad way, there's a reason for it, and you're going to learn from it, and something's going to come out of it. So just be patient.
I do feel like Brisa needs some practical advice. And I thought of one thing. When I applied to ABC7, and it wasn't for an internship, I sent the news director an email, and I just introduced myself and pitched myself, and I want to be part of your team. And I sent the draft email to my professor, my journalism professor, and I said, what do you think? And he said, you really need to move that paragraph about being bilingual and bicultural to the very top, because I had it like kind of near the bottom. So Brisa, if you write in Spanish, if you read in Spanish, if you are bilingual and bicultural, I would say that is an important asset to many newsrooms, and make sure that that is known. Oftentimes a story is breaking and producers are looking to someone to translate a live news conference in Spanish. And so these are important skill sets. So I would say if you have those skills, make sure that you're communicating that.
And I feel like, I don't know, Anabel, if you think the same, but make those emails short, get to the point. Supervisors don't have time to read this chunk email. Just get those points across, and then have something else, say something about that station and why you want to be there, rather than, oh, I love KBC because I grew up watching you.
And one more thing, sorry, I keep thinking, hopefully, and I think this is important because this is why people are watching, right? They want to grow in their careers. We had a news assistant that stands out to me because she emailed the manager for the news assistant job every Monday at 9 a.m. for 5 months.
Wow.
So, I mean, I don't know that that works for everyone. You might drive someone crazy, but it worked. And one day the manager wrote back and said, we're hiring. And now she's working as a reporter in another market. So persistence.
Yeah, it is. I think that's important too. My professor always told me, email on a Monday, do it at 8 a.m., 9 a.m., because that's when people are logging on and you want the email to be at the top.
Definitely, definitely. All right, guys, you are providing such good information. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are learning from you too today. So we have some questions on Facebook. So we're gonna go with Maria Fernanda, and she said, I used to work on radio and at Estrella Media. How difficult it is to be considered for a reporter position when you have experience in video editing, when you have experience in video edition, production, and writing. Sometimes they tend to say that you're really good at writing and editing, but they don't know how good you are in front of the camera.
I think it depends. If you can prove that you are prepared for that type of reporting, and I would say the key, one of the key skills is live reporting, right? Because in a large market, you're doing a lot of live breaking news, which is different than something that is pre-recorded. When I worked in Palm Springs, it was mostly pre-recorded reporting until I went to Mundo Fox and I covered a lot of live reports here. So I wouldn't say it's out of the question. I think if you have the experience and you can provide examples of that work, then you've got a pretty good shot. I mean, I know of reporters that, and it's rare, but there are reporters that get their first on-air reporting opportunities in LA, especially after working as producers, field producers, and doing all of that work. That just proves they already have that skill set. It's not as common, but it does happen. I'm gonna go get my second cup of coffee. I will be right back.
Anything to add, Carlos?
No, pretty much what Anabel said. Be persistent, keep practicing. You have the base of the skill set already. We have a few reporters at KTLA now that started in radio, and they jumped right into this market. So just keep practicing.
Definitely, that's awesome. And just I want to give a little commercial here. Now that Anabel said that she was gonna go get her coffee, if you guys are not following her on social media, you should see her video. She makes really cool videos about how to make coffee. I love that.
It's like my therapy too. Making my coffee makes me happy.
That's amazing. Okay, we're gonna go to the next question, and this is from Bartolomeo. He said he's an engineering realtor and author, and he wants to know how can those of us outside of the media and news industry support the Latinx that are in the media and news. So we have a lot of people that are supportive of journalists, but they are not really journalists.
Yeah, thanks for that, man. Number one, watch, read those stories, and stay informed of what's going on in your community, because we need your support in order to persuade our managers, our editors, that these stories need to be told. We were talking about that earlier, and it's all really is something that we need your support with. Number two, I think like pitching stories, right? I think that would probably be a way to support us, because we need to hear from you as well, what's going on in our community, and tell those stories of the people. So I think that would pretty much sum it up for me.
Perfect. Annabelle?
I second that, and share stories, right? And at a time where the press in general is just so vilified, it's just important to support reporters doing good journalism in general, right? From all walks of life. So support journalism. If you can subscribe to your local paper, there's a lot of reporters doing really good work. If you can subscribe to the LA Times or wherever you live, that makes a difference.
And I guess also at the end of the day, like if they see you guys on the street, not to be afraid to talk to you, right? Because sometimes the people on the street, they have the best stories. And like we always say, the community are the ones who are gonna tell us the story. Not because we're journalists, we're the ones that know all the stories out there. They're the ones who are gonna give us the best experiences.
And la opinion, right?
Definitely.
Especially.
Yeah. Okay. Before we continue to our next question, somebody asked a really easy question here, and if you guys can share your emails, because they want to know how can they get in contact with you. If you want to share your social media, that would be amazing. So people can start getting in contact with you. They can start following you. And once again, we're about to run out of time. Let's see how many more questions can we get here. And thank you everybody for following us and getting to this coming this morning to this panel. So we're getting really good information. So the next question that we have here comes from Sammy. She's a student at University of California, Riverside, and she is studying journalism, and she's been part of the school newspaper for a while, and she has been wanting to branch out into the broadcast journalism. So we're taking from newspaper to broadcast. And then I've been trying to apply for grad school, and any advice on how to start getting more hands-on experience?
I just want to say more power to you. I love to hear about reporters who come from a print background. One of my biggest regrets is not doing enough print reporting. I think it's a very important skill. It's very different, right? When you write, Jacqueline, maybe you can answer this as well. A print article is so different than a TV story, especially a local TV story. We have a minute and 45 seconds. You have to, make the story simple, and sometimes that forces you to be creative and also limits creativity and how to simplify a story, because most people, if they're watching a story, they're often multitasking, right? You have to write for the ear and kind of describe things differently. So I think it goes back to the same thing as one of the previous questions: practice, watch, learn from people, if you can, just take some online courses from different institutes, NPPA, for example, of how visually you can tell a story, what makes a good story with sound and video, and just kind of immerse yourself in that world.
Carlos, anything to add?
Yeah, those courses are going to help a lot. Start taking them as soon as you can. Don't waste any time. And watch newscasts. See what reporters here in LA or in other markets do to kind of learn from them. So you can slowly, start getting your foot in the door as well.
Yeah, and I do want to add a little bit on that. Oh, go ahead. You were going to say something?
No, that's what I was going to ask you, if you have advice.
Yes, definitely. Writing is it's interesting because writing, you get to explain everything. Like people have to, they're imagining what you're writing, so you have to be very specific. But I remember a lot when we were taking broadcast classes that they were saying that image talk. So whatever we're telling on the print version, you guys are saying it on an image. So that's why you have less time. So it's really interesting. I mean, like, I think we can do both, but sometimes at the end of the day, like you gotta find like what is it that you love the most, because it can get very tricky, definitely.
And I feel like, yeah, image, sound, that's the most important part of all of this. Let the interviewee tell the story, limit what you say, because it's kind of more, it connects better with the viewer. Just remember that.
And just be creative. I think we're also at a moment where we're rethinking the way we tell stories in many ways, both in content And, in the world of TikTok, and we have these incredible community journalists at ABC7 that are hyper local. So they focus on specific communities in LA. And I always tell them they're my inspiration. I feel like I'm a hybrid between kind of a traditional TV news reporter and our community journalists. And sometimes I don't know really where I am, but I draw a lot of inspiration from the way they tell stories in a format that's just really conversational and real. And I think don't be afraid to kind of bend some rules and tell stories in different ways.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, we're gonna go to our next question since we have very few minutes left. Being a reporter, this is from Xochitl Lagunas. Being a reporter is definitely draining, but how did you come to realize keep going and not shift into something else? You guys, this is your passion, like what keeps you going on?
For me, it's my family, because they know that this is my dream, working in LA at a TV station. So I always, when I was in Palm Springs and Arizona and in Sacramento, I had really tough times, especially in my first market in Palm Springs, and I relied so much on my family to kind of get me out of all the bad situations I was in. So for me, it was, they kept me going. They kept inspiring me, talking to my mom, talking to my dad, their pep talks, and remembering that this is your passion, that you're doing this for a reason. And just because you had a bad start doesn't mean you're gonna have a bad ending. So just keep fighting for that dream. It's really important. If you're at a small market right now and you're having a tough time, just remember it's all worth it. It's gonna get better. You're making really bad money there. It gets better in your second market. It's still kind of hard in your second market, but gets way better in your third. And then you'll start seeing, well, this is why I did it. It was all worth it.
I think it depends, right? I think you have to ask yourself some really honest questions about why you are doing this. And then not every situation is equal, right? I know of colleagues who have left newsrooms that weren't good, that were toxic, that, they just didn't feel like they were doing purposeful work, and then, went to another market and found a great place. So, it may be a matter of exploring the same job in a different place where you have more support depending on the situation. And for me, I think what has happened over the course of my career is that I've had stories and moments where I thought, okay, if I was in this job for this story, it's been worth it. We don't always see the tangible results of our stories, but sometimes we do. And it gives you that sense of there's purpose in what I'm doing. And also being open to, considering other careers if that's the route that you're taking. I still haven't ruled out, what I'm going to be doing 10, 15 years from now. I still haven't ruled out law school. I took my LSAT 2 years ago. And so I think there's purpose in the work that we do, and we have to just ask ourselves and reflect on the answers to those questions. And I think it'll open up the door to know, okay, I am in the right place. It's hard, but it's worth it. Or right now I'm not in the right place.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, we have our next question, and this is pretty interesting. If you are, this is from Cynthia Lopez. If you're writing in Spanish for the first time, how do you ensure you're using the proper terms punctuation? And I want to elaborate a little bit on this one, because one of the things that probably people don't know is that when you're writing for broadcasting, they don't care about your punctuation. They just care about you're gonna talk, right? Like I used to see a lot of people writing and they had like the most horrible writing, but when they were talking, it sounded so good, right? You guys want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, when I started in Spanish, like I said, I did not feel confident in my skill set in terms of grammar. And I've learned a lot just being totally immersed in our newsroom. And so when I would work weekends on the assignment desk at KMEX, I would ask the weekend producer, can I write some of the VOs and will you look at them? And they weren't the VOs that they were airing, but I was writing them and he would tell me, okay, change this, like this was fine. And I just forced myself to speak in Spanish all the time and listened. And when I worked in Palm Springs, I bought my Diccionario de la Real Academia Española and I would just like study words. So, you know, just you do have to put in some work if your studies have not been in Spanish, right?
Carlos, do you write in Spanish or you don't? I mean, I'm not saying for broadcast right now, but just in general.
Yeah, I do. It's not the best, but I mean, it's not the worst either. But yeah, take advantage of those connections of your mentors, people who work with you. They want to help. Just reach out to them. Don't be scared. They'll help you. So I'm sure what Anabel did is probably the best thing you can do is, you know, just practice while someone is there to help you.
Perfect. We are running out of time, so I'm gonna merge these two questions and you guys can answer however you feel more comfortable because I don't want to leave them out, but I think they're really important. One of the questions is like, what recommendation would you give to someone new to the area to be able to find more stories within these communities? I think Carlos would be a good option here since he went to work in Palm Springs and probably you had to find your stories. That's one question. And the next question is like, are there any times when you have to do a live shot and really don't have much info because people don't want to talk? How do you handle a situation like that? Go ahead.
Oh, so those live shots, there's something there that will help tell your live shot. You know, maybe there's a car crash and police isn't telling you anything, but describe how the car looks like. Where is it? How did it get there? How does the scene look? Is it yellow taped? How many cop cars are there? Things like that help you describe what the scene is looking like with limited information. And the other question was, oh, how do you get your stories if you're new to the community? For me, really is reaching out to the PIOs, to the people working at organizations, taking them to breakfast, taking them to coffee, making those calls, talking on the phone, text messages. Things like that. I was lucky enough to intern here in LA years ago. Most of those PIOs are still working here right now. So I was lucky to make that connection with them 7 years ago, and I kept in touch with them even when I wasn't working here. I said, hey, one day I'm going to be back in LA. I want to, you know, let's talk about this, talk about that. And I built a good relationship with them. So now that I'm here, they know me, they know who I am, and you know, they trust me with their information. So pretty much don't be afraid to reach out.
Yeah, I think you can be creative with your live shots to a certain degree. Be as descriptive as you can with information that is relevant, but also be honest with your producers. Like if there isn't much to show, you don't have to make it what it isn't, right? Just say what you know. And I've had 30-second live shots and said the little information I have, and that's all I got to give you right now, you know? So that's my advice.
Perfect. Okay, we're gonna go with our last question since we run out of time already, and I'm so glad we were able to get most of them. So last questions for you guys. Do you have any suggestions or advice in regards to the job search or application process?
I would say don't be afraid to reach out directly to a news director. In my experience up to this point in my career, I have not had an agent. And I think that, you know, that's something to consider depending on your situation. For me, I've always gone to my journalism professor and shared, you know, either my contract or my thoughts on career opportunities. So I would say, you know, don't be afraid to reach out, to send someone an email in the newsroom and introduce yourself. And my route has been, you know, to kind of see where there's an opportunity and just go after it. So actually, I'll stop now and let Carlos in.
Yeah, you see an opportunity that you want, you work on it. Don't give up. Send those emails, be consistent. For me, personally, it's worked to email the assistant news director, because sometimes they have more time on their hands, and they're working directly with the news director to see what kind of person they want to hire. So find out who the assistant news director is. Is there an EP that you know that works there? Is there a producer that you know that works there? Tell them, hey, this is what I have. Here's my reel. Can you share my reel with people who work there? And yeah, just don't be afraid to follow up.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. We have a little bit of information that Cassandra is going to share, but we want to thank both of you for participating. And this has been a great conversation. Cassandra, before we leave.
Thank you, everybody, so much. I'm trying to show my video, but it's, let's see. There we go. All right. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Carlos and Anabel, so much for sharing your expertise with us and really answering a lot of people's questions. Even some of my questions that I had too were answered. Please feel free to join us, follow us, and become a member with our organization. That's ccnma.org. You can go directly to the website, sign up for more webinars like these. We do these once a month, and we really appreciate all the attendees and our guest speakers too. So feel free to follow us, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and join on ccnma.org. Thank you, guys. And thank you, Carlos and Anabel and Jacqueline, for this wonderful panel.
All right, bye.
Mm-hmm.